going into COVID and coming out of COVID, and it's really been a game changer for our practice in terms of especially how we do our clear aligners and whatnot. So um, Matt's going to kind of run a lot of a presentation here, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about, how we use it, how we see revenue changes, keeping patients out of our chair, but still having great outcomes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Bill, would you mind kind of, talk a little bit about when you first started doing aligners and then the whole advent of kind of moving into the digital side? Because I think a lot of times when I'm talking to doctors, there's some reluctance there, concern about how it's going to impact the workflow, how the relationships with the patients happen. Can you go ahead and kind of just share your thoughts on that, why you guys decided to kind of move in that direction and, how it kind of came about?
Sure. So, basically we were doing a decent number of aligners, not a ton. We were having maybe 5 or so starts a month. And it started to realize that as that number increased, we were trying to see our patients about every 4 to 6 weeks. And as that number increased, we found that we were just swamped seeing people saying, "Yep, everything looks great," and "See you later." And that took up, 30 minutes of chair time. Whereas when the app was kind of presented to us, it instantly a light bulb went off in my head that, okay, so I can keep track of these people on a weekly basis. I'm seeing how they're progressing with their aligners. We're able to communicate back and forth at will, but they're not taking up hardly any of my chair time. So now I give them 25 aligners or more, and we don't see them until all those are through, unless there's a problem. And we've actually gotten quite a few reports back from the patients that they like it better. We've had a couple people that maybe the husband did it without the app and the wife did it with or whatnot. And they also were annoyed that they had to come into our office so often. But then also they feel like we have one of our Invisalign coordinator runs the app for us, so I'm not doing that much in it personally. But anytime they have a question, she's there to quick answer it. I've told her time and time again she doesn't have to answer on the weekends, but she does. So we've got the patients feel like they've really got a closer interaction with us than they did before, but we're using up less chair time, so it's great.
Got it. One of the things that, before I jump into the platform, one of the things, the objections that I've had from practices before is, they've heard so much about teledentistry, but the concern is around compliance because obviously a patient may or may not adhere to your prescription. So there's always been that worry about that. And then one of the things that, we kind of saw early on was that compliance was going to be a huge issue. And I know your treatment coordinator utilizes the compliance scorecard. Was that an apprehension of yours early on as far as, are the patients going to do what they're supposed to do? I mean, what's your thoughts around that?
I mean, our big thing was when we first were going into this, we felt like, okay, our patient's going to be comfortable using this app. So, is it realistic to expect them to do a daily check-in, a weekly check-in, so on and so forth? And what we found is as long as we spend about 3 to 5 minutes installing the app with them on their phone when we give them their aligners, that our usage rate on the app is somewhere in the upper 90s. So of course you've got that person every now and then it's just like, yeah, okay, great, and they never use it. But that's not the person we're going for. 9 out of 10 are using it and using it well. In terms of actually compliance with the aligners, we find that people are more honest to the app than they are to us in person. So sometimes they'll tell us, "Oh yeah, I wore my aligner every single day," and then you look at the app and you're like, "Well, it looks like you didn't wear it for these 3 days." "Oh yeah, I was on a bachelorette party in Vegas and I didn't take my trays with me." "Okay, that's fine. Let's just go ahead and use that tray a little bit longer." So in reality, I think we've gotten better compliance using the app because we can kind of tailor their treatment to their honesty.
Yeah. Before last piece I have as far as like your treatment plan close rate, obviously when this is being offered to a patient, they're deciding, do I want to move forward? Because it can be a pretty significant investment depending on what the treatment plan is. What is your thoughts around when this is presented to patients as far as their acceptance rate? Does that help you close more treatment plans in your opinion, or what has your experience been in that realm?
I think it's just a differentiating factor. I mean, for us in our practice in general, we're very technology forward. There's almost no traditional impressions in our office. Everything's, hey, look at this fancy iTero, look at this, look at that. So I think that it's one more thing that separates us from another office down the street. Um, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't know that I would say our close rate has increased dramatically since we started using the app, but I would say that without a doubt, because of the decreased amount of chair time that we have, our profitability on it has increased dramatically.
Got it. Okay. Well, I appreciate the intro there. That's very helpful. I just wanted to kind of level set before I kind of jumped into the showing some of the screens here.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is, and please let me know if everybody can see the screen, if we're okay. You guys see the screen?
I definitely can.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, thank you so much. So what I'm showing you here actually is a live practice, and it is the dashboard of the practice. This is all HIPAA compliant, and we've gotten authorization by not only from the practice, but the patients to show this information. So I wanted to kind of give a live example of how the workflow works here. What you see here is on the left-hand side, patients based on what kind of aligners they're doing and treatment plan. And then on the right-hand side is the message thread going back and forth between the practitioners and the patient. And then you also see some information here called treatment intelligence, which is kind of our version of when something happens, it notates the file, like somebody changed the aligner or took pictures, so it automatically updates the records. So the cool thing about this is a practice can utilize this from not only a PC or a laptop, but they also can use an app as well. And I'll show that app to you shortly. Bill, do you normally use your app most of the time? I'm assuming you probably don't use your PC, or what's your preference?
Yeah, my Invisalign coordinator uses the web portal quite a bit. I exclusively use the app. I can't tell you the last time I logged in online. So
Got it. Okay. So to jump in here real quick, just to kind of go through the process here, you see the color schemes change a little bit, and that's based on what the compliance scorecard is indicating, and I'll show that to you here shortly. When we looked at this whole process, the thing that jumped out to us was that several practices are given a lot of different single point solutions. And we tried to combine multiple elements of what I call the supply chain into one application. So there's really four things that are the main focus for a practice that we feel that we bring to the table. One is remote monitoring for really any treatment plan, but as Bill mentioned, majority of people use it for aligners, but you can use it for sleep apnea. You can use it for dental hygiene. You can use it for a multitude of different treatment plans. We're seeing sleep apnea becoming more and more popular, so a lot of people are utilizing it for sleep apnea. So remote monitoring with the compliance scorecards, number one. Number two is the ability to do live virtual calls that can be initiated by the practice or the patient. And that's standard right in the application, which I'll show you. Number three is the ability to do lead generation through what we call our branded app. We can actually reskin the application, put it in both the Android store and the iPhone store under your name, your logo, your brand. So if you choose, you can actually put a QR code or a link in any printed material or digital material, and possibly maybe offer a free consultation. And if the patient downloads the app, they immediately show up as a lead on your dashboard, so you can start engaging with them. So that's the third piece. And then the fourth piece is recall, because we all know that, a lot of time is spent on making calls and emails to patients to set them up for their next appointment. If you have real estate on their phone and they've already completed a treatment plan, you can continue to communicate with the patient either via text, you can send a video, a PDF, whatever your thought process is as far as communicating with it. And you're going to have a very high likelihood that the patient's going to respond back to you. Bill, do you guys, I know you have the branded app. I know you were thinking about potentially starting to utilize it for lead generation. Have you guys started doing that yet, or do you promote anything on your website about doing remote monitoring or things like that? Have you
We
found?
mentioned it on the website in our Invisalign section that we do remote monitoring. We do not use it as lead generation, frankly, for the only reason is we just haven't gone down that road yet.
Got it. Okay. And I'm going to show an example of that as well. But going from left to right here, one thing I wanted to point out that you may have patients in mid-process already or in mid-treatment plan. You do have the ability to import those patients into the platform without having to rekey everything. So you have that ability. I wouldn't highly recommend that if somebody's already in a treatment plan to switch them to do everything remotely, just from a comfort level standpoint, unless you have the ability to sit down with them and kind of show them the app before they start transitioning over. But some people do. So you have that option. We have already built in libraries that are already inherent in the program. These are things that have already been created depending on what the manufacturer is, what the protocol is. You can set up your own, or you can use items from the library. So it's very user friendly. You can create your own resources. A lot of doctors that we've dealt with, they'll do personal messages, a video, they'll create their own PDFs. They have, quite a bit of different materials that they'll push content to right to the patient. The cool thing about that is that when you get something sent to you via on your phone, there's a high likelihood you're going to review it and look at it. And we also can see if it's been read or it's been reviewed. So that helps from a compliance standpoint, and also helps quite a bit from a liability perspective too, depending on if you have a warranty on a product or something like that. We have different treatment templates that can be used, but you can also create your own. Again, they can be, visuals, they can be different videos, etc. Here, I wanted to show you that we can actually set up what we call associates. And this is kind of important, but I don't think Bill is utilizing this. If you have a mentor or a consultant that is helping you with specific cases, like for sleep apnea or for aligners, whatever it may be, we can actually set up an associate that's not part of your practice that can actually peer in to your practice and look at specific cases and give assistance with those. So if you're just starting in aligners and you're not feeling very comfortable yet, you can actually use a third party like Bill or somebody else to assist in that realm. So this has been very important to practices to be able to have that ability to do that. Bill, have you kind of went down that path yet, or used it from an associate standpoint, or any necessity at this point?
I mean, kind of related but different. We do have all of our internal associates set up differently into the app. So there's 8 of us, and so I have the ability to view all cases. However, our associates are just tied to their individual patients that they work with. So it's somewhat related to what you're talking about there, but it is really nice that I can see everything, but they don't have to.
Got it. And this is kind of what you're referring to. These are all
Yep.
the associates within a clinic, and then they have different levels of authorization, and can get in to see certain things. They may only are allowed to see specific patients that are in certain treatment plans. So you can set this up as a hierarchical structure, allowing people to only see certain things, etc. So that can all be done as well. Here are treatment templates. These can also be created or used in the library. You can set up different things, like for instance here, like an OSA sleep appliance, with a description of what it is, a TMJ sleep appliance. So there's a lot of flexibility in being able to create whatever you want as far as a template that you're going to be pushing out to a patient. You can use whatever aligner manufacturer you want. We're completely agnostic to whatever you prefer to use. You're not required to use any particular one. So you have a lot of flexibility in setting that up. Another thing too is we set up preset messages, so you don't have to continue to retype the same message over and over again. So you can utilize that as a scenario where you can just send a preset message. And then, the other piece here too is I want to just reference we have what's called concierge care, and this is something that you can set up where if you're going to be doing a VIP service, or maybe you want to charge for teledentistry, you can set it up where you can charge a one-time fee, a monthly fee, or an annual fee, and it'll bill the patient's credit card directly through the application. So it allows you to do a lot of different things, setting that up to be able to offer different services. With that, I'm going to stop real quick, and if anybody has any questions or anything for Bill or I'd be happy to answer them at this point before I kind of jump into a patient. Any questions?
I would say real quick, I think one of the biggest things that you mentioned, but it's a game changer for us, is when you go to download this from the Apple Store or the Google Store, you are Googling Keith and or searching Keith and Associates. You are not searching in hand. And the patient's like, you have your own app, and it's amazing that they actually, I mean, they really get on that and think that that's really, really cool. And the ability that you guys have to do that, which I know is kind of proprietary, I think is awesome. We get all the same updates that everybody gets. I get an email every so often that the app's been updated. It's not like ours is 8 generations behind. It's updated just like everything else at the same clip.
Yeah, that's very important. We've created this because if anybody's ever looked into creating their own app or building it from scratch, it's going to cost upwards of $100,000 to do, to have all the functionality and everything in there. By us being able to white label this and allow you to reskin it and brand it under your own name, it's a nominal fee, $5,000 to do that. And it does allow you to brand under your own name. It's not required, it is an option. So I just want to point that out, but that's a great point. I'm going to jump into a patient here just to kind of give everybody a feel for what the dashboard looks like. And then I'm going to also kind of jump into our apps too. So the first thing you see here is James. He started in the program September of 2022. Here's all the staff that's assigned to him. He is doing 3M Clarity as far as the type of aligner. He was given 17 aligners. He's on current aligner number 3. He's scheduled to change his aligners every 14 days. His next change day is in 10 days. You see some notes in here too, so there are note capabilities that you can set up as well. So the cool thing about this is that not only can James communicate with the practice, but the parents can communicate with the practice as well. So, obviously when you're doing aligners, there's a significant investment. And if it's a younger kid, you want to make sure you're monitoring the process and making sure everything's running smoothly as well. So the parents can monitor everything. And then here you see a green button, which is the Start Virtual Visit button. At any time, anybody in your practice can request a live virtual call with James. It'll ring right to his phone like a normal FaceTime type scenario, but it's right through the app, and it's all HIPAA compliant. And he can either text back saying, "Hey, I can't do it right now. Can we set up another time?" And then he can also do it vice versa if you choose to allow the patient to do that. And I'll show that to you here in the app. Next tab over here is proprietary to us. As Bill was talking about earlier, there's certain questions you want the patient to answer to make sure they're being compliant. The questions that are being asked to James here is, how many hours did you wear the aligners per day? How do you think the bite feels between a 1 and 10? How do you think the teeth look between a 1 and 10? And then how do you think the treatment's going between a 1 and 10? And you can set this frequency up on whatever you want to. You can see he didn't answer on certain days, which obviously impacts his treatment MPH score. This is out of 100. He's a 78, which is pretty good. I mean, he's just starting to, so he's probably not being as adamant about answering the questions on a regular basis, but he's doing okay. I mean, we always say that below 80, you should probably just give them a little nudge or make sure that they're following protocol. What do you guys typically do in your office, Bill, as far as the frequency and the type of questions? I mean, is there anything different than you guys do?
For us, like, when they start to get into that yellow band, which I think is down into the 60s,
Yeah.
then I kind of start to get a little nudge is probably the best way to put it. And frankly, what we tell them is, hey, if you're not going to be comfortable answering these questions as often, I'm going to need to see you in the office more often. And usually that nudges the compliance right back up.
Yeah.
And then, if I'm seeing that somebody's not wearing their aligners, the great part is typically we can catch that before it becomes a big enough issue that I'm doing a refinement. So, if there's multiple times with like, yeah, I didn't wear it, or only got 3 hours in, or what, the bachelorette party scenario, believe it or not, for me is pretty common. So if they tell us that, I haven't been wearing my aligners, we'll just send them a quick message. Hey, I see you've missed a few days. Why don't you go ahead and wear your current trays 5 more days? I've reset the app, so it's going to remind you to change your aligners in 5 days instead of today. And then we just move on, and typically we can avoid that refinement.
Got it. Do you ever have scenarios where people are just not being adherent whatsoever, and you have no choice but to bring them in back to the practice? Is that common, or do you think the tool kind of alleviates that or prevents that
I
from
mean, you
happening?
always have that one person that you think of, but it's pretty rare.
Okay, got it. Perfect. So, here under the prescription tab, like Bill was talking about how he can change the prescription anytime he wants to. He can go in here and, as far as the number of daily check-ins and questions that are being answered, this particular one's on once a day, but again, you can make that whatever frequency you want. And then the number of pictures, like how often are they going to be uploading pictures or videos? In this case, it's every 14 days. And what they typically do is they take a picture with their current aligner in, no aligner, and new aligner, at least for the aligner side, and then upload that into the portal. And I'll show that to you here shortly. But the next tab here, just to show you as far as resources that can be pushed out. I mentioned earlier, you can push out PDFs, different type of content, videos, whatever it is. The nice thing is it tracks everything, the date it was sent out, and then if it was read or not. You can see here that they read 2 of the 5 or 2 of the 6 here, which, may be a red flag if they're not being adherent. So you can always follow up with them saying, hey, I want to make sure you understand the instructions I gave, but at least it's tracking everything. And then here's kind of where the meat and potatoes of everything is. You see the red button here, that means that these messages have not been read yet. And we have 2 separate message threads, a patient message thread and a clinical message thread. The patient message thread is the communication going back and forth between the treatment coordinator, the doctor, or whoever's assigned to the patient. And then the clinical message thread is only between doctors or a third-party affiliate. But you see here, this is what the kind of pictures look like. He's uploading the pictures. It's date and time stamped, and then it tracks everything all throughout time as far as how he's doing and how the teeth are moving. So this keeps an ongoing record of that. You can actually go in and send a text directly to him right from the platform, or you can actually do a video, whatever your preference is. And then here's the clinical message thread, which is only being able to be seen by the practitioners in the practice or a third party that's assigned to a patient. Here you see that it's date and time stamping when aligners have been, change of aligners has been performed or whatever that might be, or it can be a personal message that you give to your treatment coordinator or a dental hygienist, whatever it may be. And then it tracks everything from a progress standpoint, all pictures, and puts it in a library, and then has that, for you at any time. And, the key component here is that from Bill's perspective, he has well over 100 patients on the platform. He can quickly go to the dashboard and see who's being compliant, who's not being compliant, or somebody can inform him somebody's not being compliant. Um, Bill, have you seen any challenges with having that many patients on the platform? And is it concerning to you? Because I mean, we found that we have people up to upwards of 200, with no problems. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, in reality, it does take a decent amount of time, not my time, but somebody's time to make sure that we're responding to the app and monitoring the app. But what I have to think about is if I had those same 100 and whatever patients coming through my office, how much of my staff's time would it take? So we do have an Invisalign coordinator that handles the app as well as all the Invisalign appointments. And she stays pretty busy with those 2 tasks. But that means that I'm doing a lot of Invisalign, so I'm not really upset about that. she can manage 100 patients, whereas if people were coming through the office, it'd be a much different scenario. So yeah, it takes time, but it's not an absurd amount of time.
Got it. Um, from your perspective, different treatment plans. I know you guys are primarily using it only for aligners. Um, you know, are you guys starting to look to see if you're going to be potentially using it for other treatment plans, or
We'd
is it?
like to roll it out for Botox, especially, I don't know how much everybody knows about Botox, but it doesn't kick in right away. So, we really want to see kind of where things are at a few weeks out. And that is huge because typically, again, we're asking the patient to come back. So that's going to be our next big push, is to roll it out for our patients that get Botox, so that they can just take a few pictures at home and not have to make an appointment to come back in to kind of show us the results.
Got it. Are you going to be promoting that through your app too? I mean,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Got it. Before I jump into the app, and I want to show you what the patient experience is, and then what the app for the doctor looks like. I'll stop here. Is there any questions or any thoughts around that you have for Bill or myself at this point? Everything pretty good? Okay. So I'm going to mirror my screen here and kind of show you what it looks like to use the app in real time. Let me pop this on.
You got all the technology tricks today, Matt.
Trying to. I don't know if it's going to let me do it though, unfortunately. Trying to get the thing to pop up here. Might have a problem with this. I did it before. It didn't let me do it now. Interesting. Let's see here. Yeah, it's not letting me mirror my screen, unfortunately. I apologize about that. I did that before and it had no problem doing it. So, Bill, from your perspective, what are some of the things as far as like, from a financial standpoint, as far as chair time, things like that, where can you kind of share a little bit about how it's changed the dynamics of your practice from a financial standpoint?
I mean, we figure that no matter what you do, it's costing us at least $20, probably more like 25, to set up a room. Between the time the assistant sets the room up, all the disposables, so on and so forth. So, every time the patient doesn't have to come in, we're saving at least that amount. But then on top of that, our doctors aren't as busy seeing these quick, 90% of the Invisalign appointments where, yeah, everything looks good, which is great. That's what we should be seeing. But if we're spending a day doing that, then you didn't have any actual revenue that came in. And remember, we're a GP office. We're not set up as an ortho office to just have people coming in and out of the door. Everything looks good. Everything looks good. So for us, it's really freed up the ability to do other procedures, and we can deal with a button that's popped off here, or an aligner that's lost there, um, in between patients, and not have to waste that chair time. Kind of going back to the, if an attachment falls off, that's a big one too, because as everybody knows, if you go and you look at the clin check or the treatment plan, you can kind of determine if we're at a point where we even really needed that attachment still. Sometimes, patients are terrible historians about what's happened. So they'll, say, oh yeah, it's the upper right, and it turns out it's the lower left. So when we have that picture where we can actually see what's attached or not attached, it helps us make the decision of, do we need to get them in and reattach that? And most of the time we find that we can get by without changing anything. So that's been good for us as well.
Got it. What's the feedback been from patients as far as that are utilizing it, and from a referral standpoint, and being able to kind of have you seen any of that move the needle at all for you guys,
Well, I
or?
mean, I think everybody's busy, and nobody really wants to come into the dentist every 4 to 6 weeks. They're all excited to get their Invisalign on, and they're excited to make this change, but they're not so excited to have to like take off work or miss school or whatever it is that they've got going on. So yeah, we've seen several patients that chose us, maybe went to a couple different offices and asked, kind of what the experience was going to be like, chose us because we had this as an option. And then we've seen several people that have referred friends and family to us because they felt like it was such a smooth experience.
Got it. Got it. Any questions at all from anybody as far as the workflow and the efficiency? Anybody got anything? Okay. I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit about the pricing to kind of give you an idea of how that works, and then also, you know, what we have as far as that, as far as options, and then kind of also talk a little bit about the profitability of this. So I'm going to pop in here. So what I'm showing you here, and by the way, for HPA members, we give a 20% discount off of the program. So we have 4 different levels here, one being the bronze level, and this is for somebody that's just starting out, and you have to have like 2 logins, meaning your dental hygienist and the doctor, and up to 30 active patients is $149 a month. And then it goes up from there as far as 4 clinical users or 4 practitioners, to 100 active patients for $249. And then if you have multiple practices, obviously the $699 level. So this is a monthly rate, and there is no contract. It's month to month, so we don't require anybody signing long-term contracts. When we first start with you, we'll do about a 1.5-hour onboarding session, and we'll actually set up all of your templates, all your resources, everything that you want from a treatment plan perspective. And that's a one-time fee of $699. And then we'll have follow-up calls with you to make sure everything's running smoothly and that you're promoting it appropriately. I would say the biggest issue is that when you do offer remote monitoring to a patient at the time of treatment plan, you want them to download the app with you before they leave the practice, because if you don't do that, they're probably not going to be as adherent to it. What have you guys set up in your office, Bill, as far as
Yeah,
that?
100%. You're given, like, I get your attachments on, you're given your trays, and then before you leave, our Invisalign coordinator sits down with you and says, "Okay, now let's get your phone out, download the app." And it takes her 3 to 5 minutes to do that, and our compliance level is, like I said, in the upper 90s, and I think it's solely because they've already got it. I would say one thing that's, I think, important to point out when you look at the pricing structure there, those are active patients. So you can archive a patient when they're done with treatment, and it doesn't count towards your 30, 100, 250, 700, whatever it is. So it's literally people in treatment at that time.
Yep, that's a good point. So what does this look like from a practice standpoint? Because I know that there's always apprehension from a workflow perspective, and we hear a lot from different doctors saying, "Well, I just don't do a high volume of starts per month," and there's some reluctance there. I wanted to kind of walk you through why you still should consider it, and we have this kind of like a profit calculator on our website here. Even if you only have, let's say, 20 patients that are actually doing remote monitoring, and you have a staff of 3 and you're currently bringing them in every 6 weeks, if you simply move it out to whatever you feel comfortable with, let's just say you move it out to 18 weeks, and maybe that's, you give half the trays to them. Here's a savings in hours as far as chair time. It's 58 hours of chair time being saved. And from a profitability standpoint, it's over $24,000. So you don't have to have a really high volume of patients in order to make this worthwhile. And I know, Bill, when you guys started, you guys probably slowly scaled on your starts, and it increased dramatically over time. I mean, what was your experience with it?
Well, and so I was nervous. So we actually started using the app, and instead of bringing them in every 4 weeks, we bring them in every 8 weeks. Um, and it didn't take me but probably about 3 months of doing that to realize that it was crazy to be bringing them in that often, since I was monitoring them weekly. So now, I mean, I've got some people that I've given 9 months of trays, um, and we just let it go. And then, if things get off on the app, then we call them and bring them in. But 18 weeks I think is very doable, but we do a lot longer than that. And it did take me a while to get comfortable with that. And I wouldn't suggest that anybody goes from 4 to 26 overnight, but I think you will find that you feel like you're bringing them in for no reason.
Got it. Do you guys do any free consultations, or is that a thing that you guys have done utilizing the live virtual calls, or is that something that you've thought of, or your volume's high enough you don't really need to do it?
We've done it. In all honesty, the majority for us as a GP practice, the majority of our Invisalign patients are coming to us as current patients. So they're in the chair having their teeth cleaned, and we're starting that conversation. So I know some ortho buddies do that a lot and are very successful with it. For us, most of the time it's not, the way that we're advertising for it, it's not a random that found us on Facebook that we need to make that connection with. But I do know several people that do that and do it very successfully.
Got it. So I guess in the overall scheme of things, as far as from your perspective, you know, from a priority standpoint, if you were a GP that are, been trained on Invisalign, you're just not doing a high volume, or you're using another manufacturer, and you just don't feel like, it's something you want to offer on a regular basis, because I've heard people say to me, hey, I've been trained, I don't feel 100% comfortable doing it, and if I get refinements, I'm just not going to make enough money on this to make it worth your while. What would your argument be to them? I mean, in that scenario, because to me, it just seems like you've been trained on it. There's always continuing courses to do. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. I mean, what's
Well,
your thoughts around
so
that?
one thing that we did, and it's kind of, I'll give a little plug to somebody else that we used is there's several services that do this, but we used a group called InvisalignDoctors.com as we were ramping up. And we would send every single case to them to just have them review our ClinCheck and make sure that we were on the right path. And you do that about 10 times, and all of a sudden you start to feel real comfortable and, okay, this is going to work, this isn't going to work. You learn different techniques and things like that. So if you're trying to get a little more comfortable, a service like that, I think, is just a total game changer. Even more so than some of the services where it's, watch a bunch of videos. They have those, but having somebody, a mentor, look at each individual case is really huge. But refinements won't crush you if you're not having to bring the patient in that much already. So, we send every single case, and it's different on different platforms, but we send every case as a comprehensive case. So I don't have to think in the back of my mind, is this going to cost me extra? I know some folks are printing in-house. There's a whole host of different ways to do this and do it successfully. But to lower that chair time like you are, you can do just a few cases a month and still be profitable. But I think you're going to find that as you get more comfortable with it and mention it to more patients, the number of cases you do just multiplies.
Got it. From the other thing that is brought up to me quite often is burnout. My staff's burnout. We're running 900 miles an hour. I can't even look at another thing right now. From your perspective, what was there a big transition as far as quality time versus just busy time in your practice, and did you become much more efficient with other aspects because of that freed up chair time? Because it's always a big concern with doctors is that I just can't bring on another thing. I'm already like redlining right now. I mean, what kind of advice would you give to somebody in that respect?
I mean, I think it's with anything. You have to find your implementer that's your person that's going to own whatever it is that you're trying to roll out. I don't think it's not just this product, but really anything you're doing. You have to have that one team member that's really jazzed and excited about it. Because as the doctor, first of all, nobody wants to hear from you, and second of all, you really you don't have the time to be that person for every little project. So if you can find, and in our case, it was our Invisalign coordinator, the person that really believes in it, that owns it, and is the one that's rolling it out, that will make it successful. So it's not impacting, we have 45 team members. It's not impacting all 45 of them. In fact, it's making 44 of their days much easier. And one of them is super excited about it because she feels like it makes her day easier too. So, if all of a sudden I think you walk in one day and say, hey, we've got this new thing and you're all going to have to change your workflow, you're going to get run out of there with pitchforks.
Sure.
But if you have a plan and roll it out in a, thoughtful way, it's super successful. And that, I think, again, that's true for anything.
Yeah. With that, I mean, I'll kind of open this up for more questions, and if there's any questions, by all means, let us know. Jessica, is there anything in particular that you wanted us to cover a little bit more in detail as well?
Sorry, it was taking me a minute to unmute myself there. I will just say thank you guys so much for joining us. It was a bummer that we couldn't do the screen share and be able to see the app in action. So apologies that that little bit of technology did not work for us today.
I'll be happy to show anybody that on a one-to-one basis too. I mean, so
Sure.
I can walk them through that and show them the app. So I'd be happy to do that.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much again for your participation today. Dr. Keith, thank you for being here. I don't have any questions in the chat, so it looks like we can likely conclude this session unless you have any additional comments that you want to add.
I'm good. Bill, you got anything?
No, I appreciate the time. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care.